So I read that you got your initial inspiration for Old Stone from a real news story about a truck driver who ran over his victim a second time.
Yes.
How were you able to spin this primary catalyst into your very psychologically provocative film?
Yeah, this situation, what the story is talking about, has been going on in not just China but a lot of Asian countries for a while. It's the first story that really got into the I would say the people subconscious was this story in China where an old lady was getting off the bus and she fell, and then a good person came and helped her up, and then she found out that she had a broken limb from the fall, and she actually ended up suing the guy and it won. So that became like a big thing, and then after that actually people in China started not like becoming wary about helping people. So it was such a huge story that I didn't, I knew that it was interesting to talk about, but I didn't find a way in to the story until I think that when I read that article, because then I really felt, wow, people are really taken to the extreme, in order to protect themselves. Because I think, by walking past, that's something we see every day, but when you deliberately take an action that causes, that to protect yourself, but causes damage to somebody else, that's really crazy. But I could see myself also, when I read that article, I think the thing that really made me feel like could be a story was when I imagined myself in his situation, the truck driver's situation, and I could imagine myself making the same decision as him, and that's what scared me the most, because then I think the question was like, how far have we come, to talk about how it became a film, I think that the original thing, I didn't really want this to be just a story about, because I know China is such a sensitive place that when you talk about something like happening in China, it would just be about China, and I didn't want that to be. I think for me it was much more interesting about how it drives a human being to take these certain actions. So. And the original news story that I read actually happened somewhere else. I think it was Thailand or even Korea. I can't remember. So I actually originally wrote the story for US. I wrote it for Detroit, in maybe a more kind of a dystopian kind of, maybe if Trump had taken over, as president in 10 years, how America would become. And Michael Shannon, was supposed to be the Lao Shi. And but it was only after, I couldn't get another project off the ground in China that I started looking at this film as, potentially happening in China again. But I wanted to have it taken place in a city that was as unrecognizable as possible, because as if it could happen anywhere in this, it represented every sort of second tier, third tier city in the process of developing, and everything else in the city was essentially, for me, I enjoy working with real non-professional actors, so all the details in the film were essentially from there, and everybody in the film that was, other than the three lead actors, were essentially from the town, playing themselves.
Do you feel like maybe doing the morally correct thing really backfires on people these days?
I think that, I wanted to create a character that was so more, I think that a lot of us could see ourselves I wanted to find a way to talk about this issue in a different way. So I thought about, like having somebody who's so good, and maybe it's so hard to find a person like that in this society now, because I think when I first send in the script to my producers, they were curious about like, oh, does a person like this really exist? And I thought about, changing aspects of it, but then I realized that the goal for me was to find somebody who was good, who was very, very rare in this society, and have him go down this tunnel, of this chaos, and then see how he would function. And actually, the character, I even went back as far as maybe Confucius. I went to see how Confucius wrote how a man should be, and that's when I wrote that's how I created the character. And I know people say that he might be too naive or too dumb, but to me that's the whole point. Because the moment we start criticizing him, being like, oh, why does he do this? Why does he do this? He should just protect himself. I think that's the big problem, because if we judge the main character, his only guilty action is that he actually tried to help somebody. So perhaps that's actually, for me, that's the whole point of the film. I actually want people to get frustrated at him, because then, hopefully after they saw the film, they would think back and reconsider, because maybe it's actually the problem is with them, with all of us, I think.
Okay. I wanted to touch upon Lao Shi's wife, Nai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She was kind of a fleeting presence, but at the same time, she deserted her husband in the face of struggle when he was doing what was innately the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think this kind of practicality and self-preservation is necessary? Is this what we need to survive?
Yeah, I mean, for me, except the main character, everyone else was based on people I have seen, the character.
Okay.
So I think that the two characters that are closest to their taxi driver, the wife, and also the captain, they represent sort of the two pillars. The wife is, self-preservation. I mean, it's about, we can't even handle ourselves. Why are you helping other people?
Yeah.
Or in the face of sort of when your family's in danger, can you still keep on, with your moral high ground?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the captain represents sort of the every, man just, like why are you doing this? Like that. I think that's the thing. That's the whole thing. So for me, they were, all of them were taken from what I've seen in sort of maybe it's just what we feel is more normal, where Lao Shi is the really abnormal one that I think that is harder and harder for us to find in this day and age. And in some way, he's probably a character that's born out of time, and I'm always fascinated by people who should be living in a different generation. Maybe 30, 40 years ago in communist China, he would be the more upright citizen, that the party commands, praises.
So in that sense, Lao Shi he's a bit abnormal, I guess, in our time, but this is only in the beginning, because his moral compass goes haywire around the end. Do you think we can still connect to him and relate to him? And at what point would that be in the progression?
Yeah, I think that for me it's definitely a tragic story about somebody who's like this, who's so good. I mean, all he wants is just be a good person. He has his own moral code that he lives with, and he's driven by this situation to a desperate measure. Obviously this is a movie and we take it to an extreme, but I think that it makes a statement that that all of us has a breaking point. I mean, not all of us. All of us preserve ourselves. We potentially get out of the situation before, but he's essentially tried to do good until the moment he snaps. And then that's when you get this. I mean, no one helped him, and so now he takes it into his own hand, and he does something so crazy that's completely opposite of who he was. But then the actor himself is so, I think that to the credits to his performance, because I do think that there was something in the script where we were worried, whether or not this character would come off as sympathetic, whether or not we would criticize him because he's too good, But then I think that Chen Gang, the actor, he really brought a humanness to it that we can see, about his stubbornness, but also that he does have this edge to it, that when you push him too far, he could, he'd snap.
I felt like the main character's final decision, and whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing to do, and it was kind of up to us, and we had our own verdict about it, because you left it at the very last scene when the tire was coming at him. So is there really a correct and incorrect thing to do here?
I think that for me, I think everybody has their own answer about that. It's wrong for me to comment on this, and maybe not after a 16-hour flight. But I do think that for where I think if the film succeeds, then I think that hopefully the audience will go on a journey with this character, and if they get to a point near when the main character really snaps, that we're with him and we're asking him, we're like, yes, go and kill this guy, go, we're cheering him on. I think that's when we really hook the audience, because then at the very end, hopefully they look at themselves like, wow, we wanted blood, in this situation, because we were so frustrated by what he had to go through, and now we want to live vicariously through him this violent release, So I don't know what's right or wrong, but if people make their decision and you go. I think to me there's no judgment in this film, At least I don't have any judgment in this film.
And it was quite cathartic.
Yeah. I want people to come out of the theater, energized and thirsty for blood. I feel like, this is a thriller, but I think only when you can grab the audience like this, then it's up to them to make this last, to bridge the gap between, what this all means, because I think that everyone has their different opinions about it.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask specifically about the times you cut into this forest scene. It was like raining, or there was wind ruffling the leaves. What was that pointing at? Was it aesthetic or?
Yeah, for me, it was like we shot in a particular location that had those trees, and we were, it's a funny story is that we kept getting driven by our location manager to those bamboos, and they kept putting it out to us that these bamboo forests were famous because that's where Ang Lee shot Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. The scenes where they were fighting and dancing in the forest. So, and those bamboos weren't very interesting to me in the beginning until I saw them in a very rainy and windy day, kind of sort of like a day like this, and the trees are just sort of waving by themselves, and it kind of reminded me of the old Kurosawa films. I can't remember the movie, but where he uses nature to emphasize sort of the human soul and how the human soul is changing, and I also remember Apocalypse Now, the first shot from it, where before I think there's something about nature, and it's very powerful when it can hopefully depict sort of what is happening. So for me, that's directly connected to where I would like audience to feel where our main character is at that particular moment.
Okay. I expected Lashi to have some sort of bitterness or blame maybe in the end towards the ruthlessness of society. But this wasn't really portrayed in him, which was what I felt.
Yeah, I think that, I feel he, at the very end, I don't know if he's thinking that much about sort of, he's certainly bitter by the experience, bitter by, the system, this insurance company, the police, everybody making away. And I think at the end he's just numb. He just gets to a point where, it's just like he's heard it all before, and so it's I think that, when he acts towards Li Jiang, the character there, I think that it's because it comes to because he's used to dealing with people to people, and not used to dealing with system and rules and stuff like that. So he can only get his anger out through dealing with a particular being, So that's why I think that he makes the choice of following Li Jiang, and maybe he can't even go through with it until he realizes that actually he's a part. He was, he needed that extra thing to go to get to become that killer. I think. I think most people, from a certain let's say level of society, they wouldn't even know where to take their frustration. You know, they have a lot of frustration. And I think this, you can see this now, you know, perhaps with, you know, some of the what's happening in Europe, you know, with England, the Brexit situation, and also in US, how Donald Trump is, because people have this frustration, but they don't know where to blame. They don't know where to blame this blame. And when somebody tells them blame this person, you know, that's how they direct it. It's very, they need, you know, very simple rules and very simple people to deal with. I think, I don't know. I think that's how I feel.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
It's interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much.